on both parts because there's a spell on both the artists and there's a spell on the people. They both have this illusion of disconnect where they can't understand both worlds. As the masses, you can't understand a celebrity's life because you feel like they got everything you lacking, but you got everything they lacking, and they're at your will, but you don't understand that because it's just being given to you. You think whatever's on the TV is whatever it is. Only now people starting to realize, hey, my view actually counts as opposed to votes. I can see what my views are doing. But I can't see what my votes are doing, but I can see when we all stop watching Vlad.
Views versus votes, right? Views versus votes. And we know that people vote with their views, right? Because when you stop voting, when you stop viewing a particular program or a platform, then that program or platform is now deemed to be, inadequate, obsolete. You know what I'm saying? They don't have the same bite anymore. They don't have the same relevance. They don't have the same fanfare. They don't have the same traction. They don't have the same a lot of things, right? So what would be more important? They say in a democratic society, what's more important? Is it the views or the votes? And if they're doing things such as shadow banning, are they not denying you your vote by denying you your view? Right? Because these platforms are the way in which we're supposed to be able to openly and freely express ourselves. Granted, because there is a transactional thing taking place all times. And that transactional situation is taking place is that they're getting paid from our views. They're getting paid from our content. They're getting paid from our participation on these platforms. Whether I'm spending time on a platform or whether I'm putting content on a platform, the platforms are getting paid from my quote unquote interaction or my engagement, right? So why would those same platforms minimize my engagement if we understand that views are just as important as votes? Because that's how people vote these days. They vote with their views. Why? Because the attention is the currency. And the thing that you pay attention to, that's what you're generating in terms of the current. So you're amplifying whatever current you're paying attention to. The reason why we feel it's necessary to have the discussions that we're having, I started a discussion earlier with the brother 19 Keys, and it was about New York podcasts and rappers. And I made a post, and somebody took offense to the fact that I even said that I was going to discuss it, right? Well, no, I posted a comment based on this video, and I'll play the video, and then I'll, give you a briefing on what the comment was. Shit is crazy. Crazy.
One thing I want to say. One thing I want to say, they always gonna whisper your accomplishments and shout your failures. Trump gonna shout the wins for all of us. Make America great again. One thing I want to say.
So immediately, people started making comments such as, that's not an FBA. And I said, granted, but flesh out that comment. Like, what do you mean by that? By saying that's not an FBA, what exactly are you saying and what's the solution? Are you saying that melanated people that come here don't necessarily understand the plight of foundational Black Americans, so they're not sympathetic to what our political goals, dreams, and aspirations are? And then one would say, do we have a overarching, understood, well-established, melanated agenda? Right? And then we have to be very mindful and real with ourselves as a community and step back and say, are we more conservative or are we more progressive as a quote unquote community? What are our politics? Right? How do we align our politics? Because people is kind of there in emotions if you're not picking one or the other these days, right? They out here picking a side and sticking to it, and they taking numbers. This shit is like the jab all over again. The same pressure that we felt 2 years ago, right, when they was running around with the Jesus juice, is almost the same pressure with people that's taking the temperature and they taking notes to see who's gang. Are you banging red? Are you banging blue? Right? So what we are kind of observing right now is that the ball is in our court, right? Because the game has been turned upside down. And if we want to say, quote unquote, Diddy sat at the top of nigga kingdom, because let's just say that the streets are intertwined with the industry, and the music influence and gives the soundtrack, the instructions, and everything else. The music is the medium for the communication. We're in the season of Gemini, so we can speak about communication. We could speak about the music is the means in which and ways the code, the information, the agenda, the program, everything is transmitted by way of the music. That's how the culture interacts and interfaces with itself. Because it's not too many other things that we do within the culture of hip hop that's congruent to what we used to do back in the days, right? Hip hop consists of breakdancing. We go to the club and we dance, you know what I'm saying? But that's not how we interact and interface and communicate. Graffiti, we're not necessarily doing that anymore, you know what I'm saying, as a people. DJing or what have you, shit, white boys got EDM. They the ones getting 9 million a show and shit like that. Not that we don't have a foot in the game, but that's not something that even looks like what we do anymore. So the music is the medium. The music is the ways in which we communicate and we connect with one another. You feel me? And the music is very effective. And we can tell that the music is effective. We can go outside and we could take, the temperature. We could take an audit. We can ask people right here in this chat, has music affected you? Your style choices and decisions, your lifestyle decisions, the things that you became aspirational for. How did you find out about them? Did you see it in a video? Was you grew up through a video? Did you grow up through that particular medium? How did you get your culture? How was you exposed to it? More than likely, it was through the medium of music by way of rap, right? So we're saying that the ball is in the court of our people because at this particular time, there's technically nobody that's sitting at the top of the pyramid. The emperor has no clothes. You feel me? And if you take the concept of saying someone like Diddy, who was a curator and a cultural ambassador, right, of not just the music, but the overall situation, the alcohol, the spirits or what have you on the party scene, on the club scene, and the nightlife, Sun played a very pivotal role. And whatever sits at the top of the pyramid of nigga kingdom, it permeates everything that's connected to that pyramid. But if that thing that's sitting at the top of the pyramid, right, has a particular energy or a frequency on it, regardless if it does or it doesn't, whatever frequency and energy it does have on it radiates. You feel me? So we have been, same way that Terrence Howard was breaking down on the program, right, about radiation, about how things radiate. This energy has been radiating for 30 years. We have been within the spectrum of radiation emitted by this frequency that has been firmly sitting at the top of nigga kingdom for 30 years. And templating culture, templating ideology, right? The way that we have formed our mind is directly impacted by our environment. And our environment has been directly impacted by the vibratory frequency of the music that forms our environment, right? And this music that has been pumping, out of these speakers is the music that has been terraforming our environment, right? Thoughts of things and words are worlds, right? And matter is formed from sound and light. So this music has played a definitive role in how our world has been formatted and framed and fashioned, and how we interact and interface with it. Okay, this music became the quote unquote soundtrack, this explaining, especially to young men and generations that are younger than, let's say, mine, how to interact and interface with women, right? And when my generation got compromised, you feel me? I feel that we were somewhat maybe the last generation that had one foot in a different day and time. Remember, I be telling y'all, there was a time when we courted women, people took pride in the relationship that they had. Like, you really understood that you was getting in a relationship, not just to have a child, but you wanted a family. You wanted to build around that. You was looking for shorty that you can wife up. You was looking for shorty that you can step out with. You was looking for shorty that you can be proud of. You was looking for a woman. You was looking for a young lady that, brought a quote unquote a value, right, to your situation that was able to raise your value. This is a time when we understood value. It's funny that during the era of Kevin Samuels, it was a whole conversation about value, and value has been removed. I feel like this is the fallout from 1992, and it has just been permeating, and it's just showing the results of the fallout. And the fallout was, we don't love them hoes, because that became such a mantra that it was able to change and terraform the music, where New York had to respond and react. And the thing that had New York in the clutches is that New York's hands had been tied prior to that proclamation by Snoop Dogg, because New York was the only place on the planet in hip hop where women had an affirmative voice, and they were able to speak in a way in which was respectful. And it's the only part of the music genre where we saw them as quote unquote equal. Everywhere else, there was a suppression of all feminine energy principles, and her respect level was not on par. Case in point, they was pimping in the Midwest, they was pimping in the West, right? And they was pimping in the South. Because I grew up on 8 Ball MJG. I know exactly what was taking place in Memphis and Tennessee and all of them other places all through the South, right? I knew it was taking place in the Midwest with the Ohio players, and we damn sure seen what was taking place in the West, right? So this is about her continuous subordination. You have to keep her under your foot, right? Because we have to be truthful about the dynamics when the street dynamics start to change. And what we consider to be the age of revolution, when our people were actually, towing the line, and there was a revolutionary spirit through all of these communities. After April 4th, 1968, when they assassinated MLK and the riots happened, the immediate response to that was Vietnam. An immediate response to Vietnam was the dope. An immediate response after that, when they came home, was the crack. An immediate response after that was the rap. Right? That now mixes the crack. It becomes a medium and a speaker through which now CIA owned and operated can promote a CIA project and product, which is crack cocaine, right, to future generations. And you neutralize the uprising or the spirit of the Panthers that was live and livid in these children who were born in the late 60s and the early 70s to these parents who were quote unquote counterculture, and they remembered what the U.S. was about. And then they sent them to war. And then they came back and they had a different understanding and a different slant. Some of them more radical, some of them neutralized. A lot of them didn't make it back. And the ones that did as well came back shell-shocked. So these were the parents of the children who now are 13 and 14 years old, running the block outside, flipping packs for sneaker money or what have you. And their parents are hiding underneath the bed because they're hearing semi-automatic and machine gun fire take place outside. They didn't go outside and engage in the battle. It reminded them of Vietnam, so they were shell-shocked and they went hiding. So the parents checked out, huh?
Bishop and Juice.
Right? They showed you that in their presidents. Right? They show you that in a lot of situations. And that's what took place. So the children now became in charge. The children of 16-year-old touching, 80 grand, 90 grand, 100 racks, and you name it. They was running it up. Right? They was running it up for the first time ever. So we went from, and this all comes on the cusp of quote unquote integration. They just opened up the door and let you in the house. We were very aspirational at that time, because the thing that you do when you're programming somebody is that the shit that you deny them from, that's the shit that they'll always grow up wanting. So we wanted that shiny TV. We wanted any and everything shiny because of how we were deprived. We felt that our humanity existed in things. So when you denied us and dehumanized us, the only thing that we was like is when we get this bread, we're going to move on up. You know what I'm saying? That's how we prove our equality. We have to be on par with you. We want to live where you live, drive what you drive, look at the TVs you look, smoke what you smoke. You know what I'm saying? And ultimately, we want to knock down who you knocking down, because that puts us on par. Right? So that forbidden fruit becomes the pinnacle of people's quote unquote symbol of success in order to achieve that golden grail. You feel me? They went and got that thing with that blonde hair and the blue eyes. So the way that nature will always conform a situation is that the women are going to conform in order to be chosen or put in position where they can do the choosing. Exactly. Right? So if the woman next to you is seeing that has now become your preference, or your attention is going there, she has to conform to those norms in order to be in proximity to be chosen. Because she has an imperative right to procreate. We all came here primarily to procreate. That's our primary primal urge. That's the agenda. At least it was. At least it was, right? In the old days, that was the initial drive. Your initial drive was to procreate. You know what I'm saying? And keep the thing going. Kick the can down the block. So that shit starts getting chipped up when they disrupt the family structure in Pluto and Libra generation, the one that I'm born in. I was born in 75. So Pluto is transformation, Libra is relationships. They transformed the relationships. They took the father out the home, and the mother had to become the primary careholder in the home and work multiple jobs. And we become latchkey children, and we raise ourselves. Right? And this opens the door for wild style shit, literally wild style shit. But hip hop is also born out of this. You feel me? But the thing about hip hop is born at a time when the CIA was engaging in a psyops or a quiet war against soul music. And that came out of a white paper that the CIA commissioned Harvard to do about how to interrupt the soul of soul music, because they said that it was causing, a increase in vibrations in our people. And at the time, we were taking, quote unquote, stock in our identity back. We were taking, quote unquote, pride in ourselves. This is where the Black and I'm Proud and all of the, affirmations and what have you, it was soundtracks to the revolution and to the awakening. And they had to shut down the frequency. So where you think all of them CIA papers that you now able to find online about mind control, and they were studying metaphysics, who do you think they was researching? What do you think that research was for? That was for black music. So Harvard commissioned Clive Davis, right, to go and break up soul music when he was the president of CBS Records. And his first clients was Gamble and Huff. And the Harvard paper laid out how he's supposed to do it. So he introduces synthesized music, and he takes the live instruments out, and he put in the digital stuff and the synths. So they took down R&B already. Then they put him in position to get ready to take down Bob Marley. That was the real psyops, that they was looking to take down Bob Marley, because they said he was causing international revolutions. He was creating music that was inspiring revolutions. And Bob Marley had not popped in the U.S. yet. He was supposed to go on tour with Stevie Wonder, And they said by no means can that tour happen. They said especially not just Bob Marley infiltrating the U.S. and catching on and inspiring these people to rebel. They said that they didn't want him to radicalize Stevie because they said if he radicalized Stevie, they lost the whole thing. There's no way that they could stop it. Because they like a radicalized Stevie, understanding the vibration that Stevie makes music at and the keys in which he makes it and the passion. They knew that Stevie would shift the culture and sway the hearts of our people to really love themselves enough to do something about finding out of the degrees of captivity that they actually have been in while they think that they've been free. Right? If they got onto the gig. You feel me? So, you guys know the rest. The CIA, Harvard graduate, Chris Blackwell, who was his manager, and then Siega, who was the prime minister, you know what I'm saying? They were both put in place, and they both put their plays together to get rid of Bob. So they get rid of Bob, right? And then Yellow Man comes in, he brings slack music, you feel me? And then they collapse reggae, and they bring in dancehall after slack. So it's the same thing. They played the same play in hip-hop, you know what I'm saying? When hip-hop came with consciousness, then they bring in gangsta, you know what I'm saying? Then they bring in crack rap. So Clive Davis signs Puff, Puff brings Bad Boy, and Puff brings Big to Bad Boy. Bad Boy, Big becomes the first perennial rapper East Coast wise to create crack rap on a level that is now international fanfare because Big has the power of the Gemini, who brings in the season of Gemini, born May 21st, 1973, I believe, the year of hip hop. It may have been 72, but nonetheless, jazz trained, right? And a jazz trained young genius, right? The man was smart as a child. He was gifted. A smart nigga playing dumb, right? For the sake of being accepted because Fat Chris always wanted to be accepted. Okay? Utilized his talent to become a bad boy, right? These two Catholic school students, Sean Combs and Christopher Wallace, right, choose the path of the bad boy, and Big ushers in crack rap, right, and makes it a fanfare, paving the way for Big Willie rap that comes by way of Jigga Man, right, with Reasonable Doubt in 1996. I hope I ain't jacked that year up. Y'all Google check that. Is it 95 or 96 Reasonable Doubt drops? Right? So, my guy comes and he ushers in the epoch. You know, when we go back to the catalog, though, when we listen, we have to ask ourselves, what did these men have against women? You know what I'm saying? Was it the shit that Nas said about Jay initially? Did you grow up, you know, with rejection? Did you have a burning hatred of women because of that rejection? Did you have mama issues that was, you know, unsettled? Or did you just grow up in the crack era where the value of women was lowered because of the things that you seen that quote unquote crackheads was willing to do? And the girlies now become free because the crack costs money. And if you was there, you understand what that shit means, right? So you see the devaluing of women. You see the desecration of the value of her. And now we start expressing what's called our entropy as a people. Because anytime that you see the male species go against the female, then that male species is ready to take a nap. And they like, I've been doing this shit for too long. You know what I'm saying? It's time to do the reverse. So they have already signed their death warrant. And they's like, I'm checking out. You know what I'm saying? Y'all niggas got it from here. It was nice knowing you. A nigger's not supposed to grow to be old, y'all. Right? That's not the lifespan of a nigga. A nigga's lifespan is supposed to be the lifespan of a fruit fly. You're supposed to do something impactful and burn out, and that's that. Like Pac. Right? Pac didn't leave a legacy in terms of a progeny to carry on his quote-unquote legacy. He was the last of a bloodline. He was the last Panther. Feel me? So these men effectively hate women, and it becomes part of a culture because the culture hates women. It's not just these men. These men have been impregnated by the energy of hatred in this world for women. And it has been fed to them so much as dog whistles, right? Because when you step across that line and you start dabbling, you make the sole contract to sell crack. Everything and everyone around you becomes either a op or means for a resource, right? Post 68, right? Like I said, the fallout really started on 4/4/68 after King got assassinated and they started rioting in these cities. The fallout from that immediately was the response, but we get the Panthers out of that, you feel me? And we get a lot of other movements that are militant and standing on business. And then they come and they hit you with Vietnam. And then after they hit you with Vietnam, they running the doozy out of Vietnam. And then people come back addicted. Then they hit you with, and they came back to Coke. Then Coke came to crack. And then boom, back. And we find ourselves in a situation that we're in, not knowing that these are different levels and lobbies of warfare that have been waged and engaged on the people. And then they do the war on poverty. And anytime they do policy that has war in front of it, they're actual victims and casualties of that war. So the war on poverty was a real war. The war on drugs was a real war. It comes from like the Department of War. They're specifically targeting people to say, we have to put down the threat. This is a war. It's not just a cute word. And when Patrick Moynihan wrote you got to go read the PDFs for yourselves, y'all. We're giving you context. Please do the research. The PDF was called The Negro Family. And in that PDF, Patrick Moynihan, who later on becomes the senator of New York, and it's very key, right? Remind me to stay there and I'm going to go back. New York. Patrick Moynihan, The Negro Family. In The Negro Family, he says, because there are single parent households and black men are being raised by their mothers, these men are obsolete in society and we need to pull the plug now because they're going to be a danger and a threat to society because they're going to be inadequate. They said no mother can raise a male child alone and that child be a productive member of society. And they said these people don't control their underworld. So they don't have a backup plan. They don't have a means and ways in which to control their economy, right? Yes, then later on comes a Joe Biden that uses this policy of the Negro Family and Patrick Moynihan, who was in Congress with him at the time, later on, and they come with the crime bill, right? But going back to the Empire State, so the Empire State is what's been compromised. So the ball is in our court, but niggas in New York don't have no balls no more because their balls belong to Ball, right? What's the empire that's being enforced here? And who's sitting at the top of this empire? It's Ball, right? Ball. These are Babylonian gods that are sitting at the top of the motherfucking empire, and they're breaking these niggas. So New York rappers and podcasters are goofy because New York itself as a mentality has been colonized, right? From the top down. And they've been having the diddler or the P. Diddy Piper sitting at the top of nigga kingdom for so long that everyone in the pyramid has become affected by the sludge that slides down the pyramid. Everyone party to the bullshit. Everyone is complicit. And that makes them unable to really have commentary that's hitting and biting or could even be considered because they're compromised. And it's within the culture. You feel me? It's within the culture. And when gang culture specifically, right, which makes it even so much crazier that they would have camera on to speak on this. The conscious community, as you know it, y'all, started, the Harlem version of it started around 2005. When we got to New York, when we got to Harlem and we came with fashion, Sinetta was selling VHS tapes of the information, but he was not active on the block in terms of bringing culture. He had a bullhorn and he was screaming at people. We brought culture with fashion, and then we brought culture with community because we were starting the ciphers and building with people. But we were pushing back against the Dipset energy that had been colonizing New York up until that point in time. And the shit that they had turned Harlem to was a cesspool, right? The gang culture had set into New York, and the shit was just atrocious. This when they was cutting people in the face with razors. They had this when the fashion was the cereal boxes with Tony the Tiger with the crack pipe. You know what I'm saying? Popeye, you know what I'm saying? With the fucking, you know, shooting doogie in his big arm and shit like that. Olive oil stringed up, shit, crackhead. This was the fashion. They was wearing the skulls. And not to knock the skulls, because we had to redeem them shits. But anyway. And there was a heavy signature of the LGBT community in Harlem at that time. They was talking about Atlanta at that time, but Atlanta is restricted to certain sections. In 2005 up to like 2007, everywhere in New York, you couldn't go nowhere and not run into that. And this is when the shit, you know, some was wearing pink. And what you got to understand, before stripper culture made its way to New York, the way that you used to go and see strippers was in Harlem at the after sets. This was the spots you go to after the club. And these would be in apartments and brownstones, right? So this is where you kind of seen the weird shit taking place, because never before in New York, like, it wasn't cool to be a trick. It wasn't a flex to say, I paid for some box. You couldn't come around the way and say that shit and be respected. And there was a subtle nature of how we had a relationship and understanding with our women, because New York is an underworld and she has to be trusted. You got to know what her metal is in order to trust her with your secrets and with your safe motherfucking information. So we studied women and we valued the women who were valuable. And you would never share secrets with someone who can be flipped, right? And it's not that you look down on them. That was not the preference. You didn't have that in the mix where it got close enough to your operation where later on the shit would become as messy as you see things today. There was a value that we understood. Women weren't necessarily selling cat, at least not in the open like that. And it was frowned upon. Because you had to have some game. Something, your name or your game had to speak for you. You could not flex and be like, I paid for some cat, or she's with me because I'm paying for her evening. Like, that shit was not respected. That shit was not respected. And niggas had to go into the Harlem and shit like that to see the strippers. And then you started going to Queens to see the strippers. And then the Bronx is where you probably go and pay for some box sitting, you know what I'm saying, Washington Heights, because they brought the Dominicans over. And that's the only thing that was able to co-sign prostitution in the city. Because, again, never before could a nigga flex and be like, I bought some cat. But these niggas was saying, yo, I ain't had to go to DR, son. I went to Dykeman. A word? And then that was the only flex that niggas was able to stand on. So I'm not getting into colorism. I'm not getting into none of that. I'm just trying to have y'all understand fucking plain Jane how it happened. And when they brought in the quote unquote exotics, that's the shit where niggas was standing on that shit and they wasn't even switching up, and they started defending that shit. And then later on, right after that comes the starlets and the clubs come to Queens. And then niggas would go to Sue Rendezvous and they was paying for box there. Right? But the rappers had to finesse. The street niggas had to finesse. The niggas who was standing on business, you couldn't be a flex. Oh, I paid for some box. How? She had to be willing to give you the box based on your, you know, your shorts, your swag. Yeah, I mean, if a nigga got on a flight and went to Brazil, you knew what that was about. If a nigga got on a flight and went to DR, you knew what that was about. But the nigga ain't come back like flexing. The nigga try to act like, you know, yeah, son, I was the man out there. You know, niggas was trying to utilize that shit to have niggas think that they had shorties until the gig was up. And that's the shit to Terraform, because this was during the time, 2005 to 2007 for the most part, they had all of the porno on the street, on the sidewalks in Harlem. This is during the Dipset era. This is shit that I'm telling you about. Some of them lowered the frequency of New York City and a lot of filth to proliferate in a way that it never did before. The streets was no longer policed. And this shit was a fallout. Like when Jay and them niggas clashed and Jay took that L and there was really no leadership, and Cameron and them knew that they could go and exploit Rockefeller's resources because Dame felt that Jay was goofy for losing the Nas. I don't give a fuck what else they tell you happened. I was there like a motherfucking fly on the wall. It was the shame that he had to live with because niggas would not let him live down the fact that his man took the L. And he used to do WBLS 107.5. He used to do a radio show with Big Head Gary, and the nigga got on the show and said that Nas won. And that's when Jay stopped fucking with him. And they'll never tell you that real story. Look, I was there today for the premiere of The Death of the Dynasty. I interviewed the nigga when he got out the Maybach. It was at the Apollo in front of my track where I hustled at. So I still got an exclusive interview when I asked him, because the dynasty had not broken up by that time, but we knew that it was broken up already. So I'm getting him to attempt to tell us, what's really going on. He wasn't there for that. You know what I'm saying? But let me not get into too much of their business. This is the situation and the terraforming that happens in the community and the society. When the king gets knocked off the throne and there's nobody to run an empire, the shit goes chaotic. And that's what's about to happen. And the shit with the New York rappers is they just delegitimize themselves because none of them niggas can stand on business because they all compromise. Let's look at it. Cameron compromise. Joe Budden compromise. Matt Hoffa, I just seen a live stream of his where he was defending Drake sending messages to a 13-year-old. Compromise. DJ Academics, compromise. DJ Flex, compromise. Who else? And let me say this, and this part is political, and I have to be clear about this. I saw EYL do a podcast on Puff the other day, right? And they had Kenny Burns with them. And I would just say this, like, yeah, Rory and Maul compromise. Maybe even backfuel to a degree, and we'll wait and see. But for the most part, because the industry connection is compromised, everybody knows these stories, and there's way more. This is the culture, y'all. You think that this is isolated? You think that this is isolated, my G? Look, Ebro compromise. Right? And EYL had a very good discourse, and they were taking a position that, they were what's the word that I should say I'm looking for? They were pushing back on Diddy, pause. Like, yo, I don't fuck with him. I never really knew him like that. They were explaining the nature of their relationship. And Ian in particular was taking a very adverse position to this man's existence. Like, he was just throwing them away. But then I also saw a video earlier that somebody shared. And because he said that he never bigged them up. And on the video, he was bigging them up initially. You know what I mean? And it gets very, weird. And in particular, these brothers, out of all of them, have to receive a level of grace because they just got in the game. You know what I'm saying? And they're aspirational to a degree that they were on the network. But they stood on business for the most part and said what they needed to say. Y'all got to go see it yourself. Like I said with Kenny Burns, I don't know the exact nature of all the relationship, but from outsiders looking in the industry, we always knew him as Little Diddy, and we knew that he got the keys to DC based on his relationship with Diddy, and they handed it over with Harvard. He always was doing parties with him. So I didn't understand that position. I'm like, are we in the Twilight Zone? What happened? What happened? What happened? Like, because, yeah, it would be like synonymous when you see it, if you understood it. And we grew up with it. So this to throw this shit out like that, it was like, all right, you know. And let me be clear, when we say Little Diddy, we mean at times people were aspirational towards different aspects of what Diddy represented in the industry. And his party persona, that's where the brother was duplicating or replicating himself for the most part. People knew him for parties, right? There's little Diddies that want to be producers like Diddy. You know what I'm saying? And then there's little diddlies for people that got accusations like that nigga. You know what I'm saying? Like Freaky Cousin though. Nori compromise. Right? So we're talking New York media. Shout out to all hip hop. I get them brothers. You know what I'm saying? To me, they get the A+ because they're not from New York. Chuck is from Delaware, and I've been around him and Grouchy Greg since the day that I was in New York in hip hop media officially, which is around 2000, 2001. And they have always been stand-up brothers. And yo, this game don't come without politics, so nobody's perfect. You know what I'm saying? But if you understand how this shit can break you, especially media, because you have to conform to the handlers in order to get access, or you go rogue. And those brothers have walked an amazing line from what I could tell. I've never seen a face to SOHH. I've never seen a face to Hip Hop DX. Shout out to Nah Right. He, you know what I'm saying? If Nah Right was still around, that brother right there, you know what I'm saying? He was one of the best bloggers during that era. Elliot Wilson is compromised all the way. B-Dot is compromised because of his affiliation with Elliot Wilson. All of Complex is compromised. Joe Budden is compromised. He cannot speak about abuse. He can't defend women. He can't speak counter or contrary to any conversation that's taking place because of his level of complicity. And the thing that's being afforded people right now is the opportunity to take accountability. And they're failing. They were failing last year, and they're still continuing to fail. You know what I'm saying? So that was a bad fail for him the other day. You know what I mean? But I could look at a distance and first see what the angle is going to be. You know what I'm saying? And this shit comes back to mental health. And these artists that are saying that they got mental health treatment, you know, we can only see in the results of how they interact and interface. Charlamagne is compromised. You know what I'm saying? Charlamagne is compromised. Because this has to still be about humanizing the person who you did harm to some degree.
Still trying to deny it.
And still in denial, it's like, what are you getting therapy for then? The full part of therapy is accountability and acceptance, because you're closing a chapter, especially if you're healed. And people are playing with therapy. And people are playing with therapy. And that's the shit that hurts the most. Therapy is now becoming a hustle because people realize that they can utilize that as a shield to hide from accountability. Why are you going to therapy then if you're not accountable for something that needs work on? And what needs work? What made you realize that you need work, if not the infraction of saying, I didn't have control, I lost control, I need to be more accountable. So how can Diddy say, oh, I went to therapy? Where's the accountability? Because you were denying up until Sunday that nothing ever happened and this person was out of their mind and it was a money grab. And then you have recent accusations. So it's a lie on top of a lie on top of everything. Every time these people open their mouth, lies come out. So just like media. So hip hop media has become an arm of mainstream media because they're controlled by the same corporation. And they couldn't tell the truth if they wanted to because they don't own their voice. So we got to throw the whole shit away and once again put value back in those who do own their voice, right? Independence, yes. Rest in peace to Combat Jack. He was a real one, and he would have been the one, for the most part, from what I could see, that would have stood on business and made the ultimate sacrifice and telling the truth and being a man with his, because he looked like he wanted to get his testes back, right? Because they break you in this game, y'all. They break you in this game. These men don't have the testicular fortitude to stand on their own, because this is how they pay their rent. This is how they make their livelihood. They don't have no backup plan. They're in the system just like other people are in the system with a 9 to 5. It might have started as a passion, but this is what pays the bills. They don't have the testicular fortitude. In New York City, with that rent, them niggas got to play the game. They have to march to the motherfucking beat if they want to get some crumbs from that industry. So they're compromised. You feel me? They have to tote the line. And you get kicked out of that shit, where you gonna go? What you gonna do? Even with online media, they're not confident enough in themselves to say, I can build this from bandwidth up. They don't got that in them. New York is an industry city. It teaches you how to live off the industry. The shit will get you very fucking comfortable and very spoiled and very entitled, right? When you feel what it's like to be served by the shit that you're a part of. But that shit is transactional for your energy. And when they're through with you, they fucking get rid of you. And nobody that's part of the industry wants to go through that voluntarily. They don't have no backup. So they compromise. So Baal owns their balls. And that's the empire state. It's a Babylonian empire. But now the emperor has no clothes. So there's nobody that's sitting at the top. So there's a scramble for the top. And they just knocked off the person who they was going to replace, which is BBL Drizzy, who made a fatal fucking mistake of falling into the glue trap. Because if you listen to them rhymes, even what he's talking about now, he cannot redeem himself because he does not understand the nuances. They were looking at you different because you're not like us. And it's showing, and your slip is showing. And anytime that you stand next to Sexy Red now, all I see is 2 bad bitches, and I can't unsee it. And then you jumped on the BBL. So I definitely see 2 bad bitches. And one with a BBL.
You don't get it.
And both of y'all don't love yourselves. And it's the nuance. You just don't fucking, he's tone deaf. And that's what we're saying. That you can be in the quote unquote culture. There's an ethnicity difference. There's a cultural difference. That boy is his mama boy. He's a 69 god. He's not a 9 ether god. He's a 69 god. Take that shit back over there. You know where there is. And both of them is fucking isolated. And both of them is running from indictments. I'm talking about him and his people. The ones that's over there getting indicted in the international criminal courts. Right? And running and hiding behind bloodthirst and despicable demonic shit that's taking place on this planet right now in the name of righteousness. In the name of righteousness. Right? God's chosen people. And you ain't hear peep out of that about none of these New York rappers or these podcasters. Why? Because you know who controls their industry that they in. You know who controls the city that they in. You know who sits at the top of the empire. Right? Ball. That's who has their balls. But the ball is in our court and it's time to take it back. You know what I'm saying? And start shooting for the 3. It's shooting for the key, shooting for the 3 with this mama mentality. It's Kobe 24. It's really time that we dig in. For those of us who do have the source code, for those of us that do have knowledge of self, for those of us that do have the confidence, for those of us that do have the bars, for those of us that do have the creativity, for those of us that do have the passion, for those of us that do have the love, for those of us that have chosen ourselves as the elect. It's time. It's time. It's time to activate. The door is just a jar open. You always said that you wanted this time. Now it's here. Collectively, as a creative community, Can we create a creative common community to stand on what we consider to be the tall glass of clean water? Because I don't know if you understand the optics. They said Lauryn Hill had the #1 album of all time. And then they said Kendrick had the #1 streaming song of all time. Consciousness is winning, and it's always one. It is always one. And that shit, you at the park and shit, you go to play baseball, and you throw your bag, you know what I'm saying? But your bag got your jewelry in it and shit like that, because you have to take all your Cubans off and everything to play ball. And the shit got some dirt on it, and people kept kicking the dirt because it was a mound, and it got enough dirt that it covered the bag, and you ain't been able to find it in a way. And you've been going crazy and shit. But it ain't been buried, and it's not missing. It's just been covered by some dirt. You know what I'm saying? You could dust it off. You could literally pick the bag up and then reset and start anew. And that's where we at right now. That's where we at right now. We can start anew. No one has to give you permission to create. Right? And I promise you, the magic is in the momentum. There's means and ways in which you can get your streams where you need them to be and reach your fan base and touch the people. And there's going to be more means and ways in which it's going to happen. But the magic is in the momentum. Why don't you get started? Why don't you start moving? Man, look, I met Rhapsody the other day, y'all. I met Rhapsody. You know what I'm saying? Super dope artist. And a beautiful person in terms of her spirit. And her album was dope. And she is a top tier, she's a God tier MC. Not a female MC. Not a female MC. A top tier MC. Hands down, point blank, period. She has a liquid sword that is one of the top in the game at this time. And that has to be honored. And also understood that for the most part, she's making conscious music, if that's what you want to call quote unquote conscious, because it's not the other vibration, right? So we win it and don't even know it. We don't even want to claim our victories. And they're right in our face. But the universe speaks through signs and it's telling you it's time to get on your grind. You know what I'm saying? Stand 10 toes down on your talent right now and let it speak for you. There's a door that's wide open. And the people are interested, they're inquisitive. You know? You got to continuously hit them with them bops. Right? We have to make every attempt possible at this time to connect and reach our people with a higher vibration. Knowing that it can transform this nation. You know what I'm saying? And there's recompense that comes with that. Your people are going to take care of you. Right? Because the people need to be taken care of with your frequency, with your vibration, with your music. Shout out to the brother AC McQueen. They're taking a tour around the country. He's going to be bringing that frequency and that vibration with him. Last year, this time, I was on a high-level tour, bringing high-level frequency around the nation, and they ready. The people that we ran into, all of them were beautiful. All of them had great energy. All of them was enthusiastic. Right? All of them could be potential members and part of a community. You feel me? Because they was ready. And they look like they tired of this shit. This old shit. This decrepit shit. This mold shit. They want to get back to this gold shit. You feel me? And we don't got to make excuses for ourselves. Like, it's possible. It's here. It's nothing but opportunity popping off. Right? But this energy right here.
One thing I want to say. One thing I want to say. They always gonna whisper your accomplishments and shout your failures. Trump gonna shout the wins for all of us.
Peace to the God.
Make America great again. One thing I want to say.
So, you know, our young brothers and our young sisters, specifically in a city like New York City, which is the Empire State, and things that happen in Empire State, they reverberate around the rest of the country. We set the standard. When drill rappers, right, who you would think, you know, will be the last people that embrace politics or get on a political stage, specifically somebody that just got caught in a RICO indictment, you would think that, you know what I'm saying, that the artists would kind of, you know, because it's an oxymoron. If I say stay out of politics, that goes counter to what we used to always tell the artists. Like, y'all need to be a little bit more involved in politics and telling your audience, you know what I'm saying, some of this political game so they can make moves. Now, the way that you do national politics is you come with the bag because all politicians are for sale. And what you call it? Dr. Claude Anderson told you that. You feel me? The only way that you move the needle in politics is not with your vote. It's with the bag. You got to go to lobbyists. You got to create a political action committee. And this is what the brother from EYL said that he went and spoke to Puff about when he had his audience. He said that he told Puff, you know, let's utilize this momentum that you got with this black excellence push and let's create what's considered to be a political action committee so we can teach our people politics and they could get into, you know, different arenas and spheres of politics and affect actual change. And, you know, he said that he wanted to help the people. And this is the plan that he laid out for your mans to help the people. And then every time after that we heard your mans, you know, he had woke talking points. And we was getting sucked in and duped in like, oh shit, did he woke now? Oh, son is going in. This nigga's financially literate. Nah. He absorbed the conversations that was had to him by these young men who were attempting to get his pledge to help them create a PAC, which is a political action committee, which if we want to get into presidential politics for real, this is how you interact and interface with presidential politics. Because one thing's for sure and two things for certain. Let's be clear. And I kind of see the play because it's a hustle. And if hustlers don't get in place, please understand they come into the community with the bag, right? Both parties is coming with the bag. They're coming with the suitcase, matter of fact. Because Biden said he got 300 M's for the black community, right? So these niggas is coming around to buy votes. They're coming around to buy influence. And they're coming around to purchase stages. Okay? Let's be clear. And if you're not in position to get it, somebody else is. Right? Specifically, if you find yourself, you know, without being dressed for the party, such as a political action committee that can interface with that check, because it can't go from business to person. It has to go from B to B and things of that nature. So if you really want to play politics, know that they're coming with the bag. You feel me? Know that they're coming with the bag. Have a plan for that bag on how you could really feed the community and amplify your agenda, right? But they're coming around and they're coming for these votes, and people is going to be, you know, dancing on the roof like the fiddler playing the diddler because he was once a Democratic bagman. Remember Vote or Die? Remember this guy named Harvey Weinstein? Huh? Harvey Weinstein was the main Democratic party donor bagman in Hollywood, and Diddy was on the party scene. And with that, I'm going to leave y'all, family. My time is running out. I appreciate you. Peace, love, and light. We will pick up this conversation where we left it. Hopefully, I shared something with you today that resonated in a way that can open up your eyes to the things that you see in front of you. Have discernment. Peace, y'all.